Hello everyone, and welcome today to an updated webinar on CUTRIC, the Canadian Urban Transit Research and Innovation Consortium. I'm going to be taking you through an update on the initiative. For those of you who are aware of the initiative already, some of this will be a little bit of repeat knowledge, but a lot of it will be quite new information. So the first thing that we're going to do is introduce myself and the initiative overall. My name is Josipa Petrinic, and I'm the Executive Director and CEO. I'm currently running the operation from its startup phase, which started in March of this year, until November of this year. The webinar today is going to last about 12 minutes. The agenda is an introduction, an overview of the R&D areas, an overview of the currently proposed membership structure and tiers, a review of the regional consultations and roundtables, as well as an account of the upcoming first CUTRIC Annual Fall Forum, and the provincial contributions and federal contributions to operational and project R&D co-financing. So to begin with the introduction, for some of you this is a little bit of repeat knowledge again, but for many of you it may be new. The vision of CUTRIC as an urban transit research and innovation consortium is to literally render Canada a global leader in transit innovation. We know we have excellent innovation capacity and capabilities across the country, but we also know that they are fragmented, they're not necessarily coordinated, and there isn't a one-stop shop where people can go and companies can go to find and connect with academic partners for advanced research development and innovation projects. So the vision is really to create that one-stop shop, and the mission is a particular mechanism for doing so. It's to foster the development of cutting-edge technologies, services, and solutions for Canadian transit systems through industry academic collaborations. So the mechanism there is industry academic collaborations. In other words, the projects that CUTRIC, or CRITUC en français, are going to support are projects that involve industry partners and academic partners in Canada. The stakeholders involved here are OEMs, so original equipment manufacturers, SMEs, as small to mid-sized enterprises, academic and public research facilities, and public co-financers. Eventually, the goal is that CUTRIC will attract private investment capital for some of the advanced R&D and innovation projects. In terms of the timeline and where we are, many of you are aware that the CUTRIC initiative started up really a couple years ago from within CUTA, the Canadian Urban Transit Association, and also from within a series of stakeholders across British Columbia, most of whom were allied to the fuel cell industry in that province. Where we are now is that CUTA took it upon itself to offer a loan to initiate this startup phase. So a loan was provided, which started in March of this year. That loan pays for my salary, it pays for travel expenses, it pays for the operational costs of setting up a website, creating a logo and branding, and it also pays for the consultation processes that some of you have been involved in already, and the details of which I'll get into later in this presentation. Where we are going is November of this year, which is the formal end of the startup phase. That's when the CUTA loan comes to an end, and when in theory provincial contributions and founding fee memberships will kick in, which should give many of you an indication that I will be coming around over the next couple of months looking to establish a roster of founding members among industrial stakeholders who are willing to pay an starting membership fee to help the operational structure of CUTRIC continue through 2016 while first year or first cycle research and development projects are being formulated and submitted for co-financing. In addition, I'm going to the various provinces, 4 of which are the focus of this initiative: Ontario, Quebec, British Columbia, and Manitoba, and I am seeking operational cost support from those provinces. Now, to move into the industry-led governance system that is really defining the CUTRIC initiative, this is an image that describes to you who the board is right now. And this is an interim board, so you can see that Daniel Bergeron at AMT is the chair. Directors include Philippe Ballon at Metrolinx, Mario Pellequin at Thales, Michael Rochelot, the former president and CEO of CUTA, Eric Gillespie at the region of Waterloo, and Sue Connor at Brampton Transit. That is an interim board established to help CUTRIC through its startup phase, but the full board structure, which will be initiated after the first annual general meeting of CUTRIC, which is likely to happen later this year at the beginning of next year, will look more along these lines. And you can see there that the green portion of the pie is the significant portion of the board. This particular graphic is based on the assumption of a 20-member board. It is likely the board will be fewer members, in line with best practices in recent years, and certainly in line with federal legislation on best practices for board governance. With regards to that point, industry members will form a majority of the board members, because it's industry members that will form at least half, if not the majority, of CUTRIC membership. And of course, CUTRIC projects are industry-led initiatives. So we want to make sure that corporate leaders are at the table guiding the structure of the organization. I also benefit from an advisory board, and you can see there the members of the advisory board who meet with me on a monthly basis to provide me with insight into the transit organizations that will ultimately benefit from these technologies, as well as some of the corporate organizations that are leading research and development in-house already. In terms of the R&D projects, this section of the presentation will review very quickly the outcomes of my consultations over the past few months across Canada. Some of you have already seen this presentation at the CUTA annual conference in Winnipeg. There are 3 tiers of R&D that have really emerged as quite prominent. There are, and I want to add this as an underlined caveat point, there are additional R&D areas that may crop up and which have cropped up in recent weeks that are not reflected in these slides. But in general, the areas of most interest that corporations and universities are promoting as areas requiring R&D and areas where we have significant capacity for R&D include alternative propulsion systems, so electric propulsion, fuel cell propulsion, and natural gas propulsion. And within that, R&D projects are being proposed not only around the powertrain componentry, but also the fueling system, fueling storage, and fueling transportation. So that includes both includes electricity, hydrogen, and natural gas from a fuel perspective. Then you can see there that the 4th image is material sciences. That's actually a piece of carbon fiber, though it appears as a black box on the PowerPoint. It is the notion that across Canada we have significant capacity in advanced materials for lightweighting of component parts, and also the vehicle chassis itself. And this includes alloys and steels, biomaterials, biofibers, composites, and advanced composites. The second tier of innovation really relates to the analytics side of things, the data side, and the software controls. So you can see here the number of projects proposed are falling into 4 categories, 3 of which are really around software tooling. Data analytics for operational cost reduction. This is related to projects that have been proposed around using transit data to improve routes, improve traffic signals, improve city planning, and improve the usage of assets. Then there's data analytics around the consumer, so the usage of transit data to really provide applications and tools for the consumer, the rider, to improve their rider experience. And then there's signaling and autonomous vehicle controls. This is really emerging around the rail sector, but also important in the potential future for rapid transit routes in terms of the signaling controls and the sensors required to enable those technologies. And then as a 4th category within this tier, there's asset management, innovation, business strategies being proposed. So the idea that if we do have excellent analytics and we do have excellent applications and tooling and signaling and sensors and sensor controls, then can we not reallocate our assets, or at least reconsider the way in which we manage and purchase assets as transit operators? So certainly there's some proposals in the social sciences sphere around those business studies. Then the 3rd category, or rather the 3rd tier containing categories of R&D, are around some niche product areas, e-finance solutions, so the idea of a one card for all, mobility integration solutions, so the idea of research projects that look at integrating electric vehicles or alternative mobility at stations and station stops or station hubs for train travel, the idea of R&D around business on the bus, so all the applications, tools that people want when they're riding the bus or the train so that they can be productive employees en route, things like Wi-Fi installations and optimized Wi-Fi installations. And then as a 4th category, there's specialized transit, and this includes the entire remit of technologies around specialized transit. So alternative propulsion for specialized transit vehicles, better interior design for specialized transit, better exterior design and connectivity of the transit vehicle to the system in which it's integrated, lightweighting of materials for transit vehicles, or specialized transit vehicles. So as you can see, the entire gamut of technologies within specialized transit gets repeated. Now, in terms of the basic features of CUTRIC projects, there are some general features which many of you have asked for clarification apropos of. So the basic features are as follows. CUTRIC projects, as I mentioned already, will be industry-led, academic industry partnerships. They will be ideally supported by provincial governments, but it is obviously the case that not every provincial government in Canada is ready or willing to support transit innovation or transportation manufacturing innovation. So we are really focusing our efforts on Ontario, Quebec, British Columbia, Manitoba to start with, although that's not an exclusive list. Project specifics, most projects will be 2 industry members to 2 academic members. We'll be looking for federal leveraging, and the TRL range, really the technology readiness level range, is from 1 to 6. So everything from primary research and researchy, sciencey projects up to the piloting, demonstration, testing stages. Now, in terms of the value add, some of you have already experienced this part of the presentation, but for those of you who are new to these kinds of industry academic projects, there are a series of value-added benefits associated with these projects. If your company is looking at a project in the lower level TRL, then you're looking to train highly qualified personnel, gain some new creative ideas, learn something new by testing it out with a university laboratory, and in many cases help a small to mid-sized enterprise grow up. So in other words, you may have a supplier or you may work with a small to mid-sized enterprise that you want to work with on an R&D project in order to help develop their capacities for your own benefit. In terms of the TRL scale 4 to 6, the most obvious value add is the generation of IP that's relevant to some commercial value outcomes, the training of highly qualified personnel, again, the testing of the university laboratory, and helping an SME to grow. Now, these value adds, of course, come on the basis of shared project costs. So the idea here through CUTRIC is that an industry dollar is leveraged by a tax dollar at the provincial or federal level, which helps companies to develop these projects and thus benefit from these value-added benefits. In terms of the regional consultations, some of you have already been part of the British Columbia regional consultation, which happened in June, but there are a number of regional consultations planned for this September. The point of these consultations is I go to the regional areas, to the provinces in question, and we bring together a large group of industry and academic stakeholders along with government financiers and government representatives. And the objective there is that I extract information regarding the regional capacities for transit and transportation innovation. So out of the British Columbia consultation session held in June, for example, it was quite obvious that there's an extraordinary amount of capacity around fuel cell innovation, diesel to electric conversion, land usage considerations and research, and to some extent natural gas innovation as well. So these consultations truly help me understand what the innovation landscape looks like on a regional basis, and the results of these consultations are being fed into individualized reports that are being shared with Industry Canada, Transport Canada, NSERC and SSHRC, as well as provincial transportation, energy and innovation ministries. The idea is using these consultations as a way to justify and argue in favor of public co-financing for these projects. You can see there from the list that the next consultations are scheduled for Quebec in Montreal, and that is being hosted by McGill University on September 3rd. In Manitoba on September 10th, that is being hosted by Red River College, and in Ontario in London on September 17th, and that is being hosted by the National Research Council in their London facility. The culmination of these consultation sessions will be the November 20th, although that date is still to be determined, National Forum, which is being hosted by the National Research Council in Boucherville, in their facility in Boucherville. This aligns with the CUTA Annual Fall Conference in Montreal. The idea of this national conference, or rather forum, is that this will be the first place where industries are asked, as companies, to stand up on stage, articulate and describe their R&D interests, their needs, and add to it a value for the project with a timeline. A template and guidelines for the structure of those presentations will be issued in September and October. So those companies that are invited to the consultation sessions in September will be invited to present at the Fall Forum based on the readiness of their project ideas. And that should indicate to you that not all companies will be ready to present in November. Those companies that have clear and articulated R&D needs and projects that can be defined according to the template guidelines we issue will be those that will be presenting at that national forum. Now, just to briefly summarize, and this is a point that I will follow up with individual companies apropos of, we are using the CUTRIC program framework. And the CUTRIC program framework comes also from the CRITUC program framework. For those of you who are familiar with CRITUC and CUTRIC, it is the Aerospace Innovation Consortium that started in Quebec and is now national in scope. CUTRIC and CRITUC have experienced over 10 years of success. Well, CRITUC has, and CUTRIC is the recent outgrowth of that. In terms of the structure that CUTRIC uses and CRITUC uses, they also divide their projects into low TRLs and high TRLs. You can see from this slide that they have very specific guidelines on low TRL project structures as industry-led projects incorporating universities and colleges, a minimum of 2 industry players with 2 academic partners, and a typical duration of 3 to 4 years. This is the structure that CUTRIC is using for transit innovation projects at the low TRL level. Similarly, at the higher TRL level, CUTRIC uses the structure of industry-led projects, industry-delivered projects, a minimum of 2 industry partners and 2 academic partners, a strong recommendation to include an SME, and a typical duration of 2 to 3 years. Again, CUTRIC is using the CUTRIC framework for mid-TRL level projects. This is a summary of the assessment that CRITUC and CUTRIC use for their low TRL projects and their mid-TRL projects. Again, many of you have asked me for guidelines on what the projects need to look like and the frameworks that they need to use in order to gain co-financing in 2016 and onwards. I am using, and CUTRIC is using, the CRITUC and CUTRIC framework for assessment. And that means we're looking at the quality of the project, the impact of the project, and the project management at stake for both low TRL and mid-TRL. For those of you who are interested in getting more into the detail of this framework, please do follow up with me. I'd be happy to take you through the detailed framework. This is an indication of what the optimized funding scenarios are that CUTRIC currently uses. Again, CUTRIC is building on this best practice as a model. Here are 3 examples. For low TRL, where you have provincial investment, you're looking at, say, a project valued at $125,000 will be divided with industry providing about 25% of the cash, NSERC or another federal agency providing about 50% of the cash, and between the province and the consortium, another 25%. So you're really looking at $1 by industry being matched by 3 additional dollars from other sources. In the low TRL provinces where there is no provincial support, there's a slightly different funding ratio at play. And with mid-TRL level projects, there's a different funding ratio again where industry is expected to provide more of the money for those projects. So to summarize the CRITUC and CUTRIC best practices in terms of CUTRIC, CUTRIC is operating on the following proposed funding ratios. At least I can say this is what I am actively taking to government agencies and looking to gain support with regards to. In terms of low TRL projects, we're looking for 1 industry dollar to be matched by 1 CUTRIC or provincial dollar and 2 federal dollars. For mid-level TRL projects, we're looking for 2 industry dollars to be matched by 2 other dollars. In other words, for mid or low TRL projects, industries are being asked to contribute 25% of project costs, and for mid-TRL projects, industries are being asked to contribute 50% of the project cost. Right now, I'm on a one-woman mission in partnership with the whole Association of CUTA behind me to really obtain the provincial and federal funding to make these funding ratios a reality. We are operating on the basis that we will gain that support, at least in a commitment for this level of support so that projects can unfold and essentially commence in the second half of 2016. To give you a timeline, following the November Fall Forum, there will be about 3 months where I will be working directly with those companies that are shovel ready and really have well-developed project ideas to put their projects into proposal format for NSERC, SSHRC, SDTC, or an alternative federal branch of government, in addition to the provincial branch that we identify in the provinces of relevance. And following that, for about 3 months, from approximately February, March, April to May, these projects will be submitted for funding approval. We expect by June, July, August to obtain word back as to which Cycle 1 projects have obtained funding approval. And therefore, my expectation is that CUTRIC's cycle 1 or year 1 projects will be ready to go by August of 2016. And this is the proposal I'm putting to provincial and federal government agencies, essentially to say that unless they are able to come to the table with a funding commitment, those projects, which will be shovel ready by August 2016, will not be able to take effect. And so that is really the urgency of the issue. For those of you who are coming from industry now, I'm just going to review very quickly how the consortium will be established. As you know, consortia are established on membership fees. Membership fees help with the operational cost of the organization. CUTRIC has adopted a skeletal and very strict standard of operational costs. So membership fee structures are currently being proposed around the following framework. Divided our industry members into large, medium, and small, and very small companies. Divided our academic members into public, private universities and colleges. Transit members are divided into large, medium, and small operators, where the guidelines around those divisions will be issued again in September, October. And then there's government, crown corporations, and municipal corporations. The membership fee range you see on the right is the proposed membership fee structure. Companies, industry members, transit system members, academic members, and government members only pay membership fees if they are actively involved in an R&D project. The only time that this differs is in year 1, in other words, in the year that we are currently in. And that is because we don't have R&D projects currently established, but CUTRIC does need to exist past November. And therefore, I am in the stage of asking about a dozen companies and leading organizations to serve as founding members. That means companies that are willing to pay membership fee to help CUTRIC exist operationally from November 2015 until November 2016 to ensure that projects can continue to be developed and that government relationships can continue to be developed in the interest of establishing the co-financing that is required for 2016 projects to take effect. To summarize then and to conclude, the proposed project R&D cost that we are operating on in the financial plan behind CUTRIC is using the following assumptions. That in cycle 1, or the first round of project funding, assuming that projects are ready to go by late 2016, we're using here a cycle of 2017 to 2019, and the assumption is that between that period there will be 10 CUTRIC projects unfolded. I expect that about 4 will be in Ontario, 4 in Quebec, and 2 other. That may or may not be accurate, but it is my assumption based on my consultation so far. The assumption as well is that most projects will average about $3 million over 4 years for low-level TRL, that there will be approximately 10 projects at $3 million, so $30 million nationally dispersed on these projects. In terms of the funding ratio, again, the 1:1 to 2 for low TRL, and here you see the provincial breakdown. So essentially what I'm asking provinces to commit to for cycle 1 projects are the breakdowns you see there. Ontario is being asked to commit approximately $3 million, Quebec will be asked to commit $3 million over 4 years. That's not an extraordinary amount of money. However, cycle 1 does overlap with cycle 2. So you can see there that there will be a second round of CUTRIC projects that will be proposed and announced within that same 4-year time frame. And so the goal is for CUTRIC to grow to approximately 20 projects by 2021, 20 new projects, that is, by 2021. And there you see Ontario, Quebec, Manitoba, BC, and potentially other provinces will be asked to commit their portion over that time frame. From an Ontario perspective, I can tell you in terms of our negotiations that they're commencing very positively. The request is that Ontario really find a way to commit approximately $2 to $3 million per year to co-finance CUTRIC projects starting in 2016. The same request is being made of Quebec, a similar request is being made of British Columbia, and a similar request will soon be made of the government of Manitoba. I look forward to updating you all on the project funding as it unfolds over the next few months, and I look forward to inviting you all to the further consultation sessions in September. At that point, I will take you through cycle 3 project proposals as well. But up until that point, I would like to thank you for your attention. I know this has been a great deal of information in a short period of time, but it does give you an overview and high-level view of CUTRIC, the innovation projects that it's looking to support, the target areas, and the provinces where we are targeting our government relations efforts for government financing. You can reach me at the following email and cell phone number, which is the ideal phone number to reach me at because I'm frequently on the road. I look forward to speaking with you directly if you are an industry stakeholder or an academic stakeholder. Thank you.